וידבר השם אל משה לאמור דבר בני ישראל איש או אישה כי יעשו מכל חטאויס האדם לימול מעל בהשם ואשמה הנפש ההיא ויספדו את חטאותם אשר עשו וישבץ השמוי בראשו וחמישיסו יוסף עליו ונתן לאשר שם לוי ואם אין לאיש גוי להשיב האשם אליו האשם המושב להשם לכהן מלבד אל הכיפורים אשר יכפר בו עליו כל תרומה לכל קודשי בני ישראל אשר יקריבו לכהן לא יהיה ואיש את קודשיו לא יהיו איש אשר ייתן לכהן לא יהיה. What's this talking about? It's talking about when somebody steals from a ger. What's the problem? The problem is if a Jew dies and somebody's stolen from him, so there's not normally a problem with returning the stuff that was stolen because it will go to his family. But very often when you've got a non-Jew who's converted, so he doesn't have any family, so what's he supposed to do? What happens to the things that have to be given back? So the Torah is telling us that there are two different things over here. That first of all, the money has to be given back. If it can't be given back to the person himself, then it should be given to the Kohanim. And secondly, there's some kind of a fine that is added over here that has to be paid as well. It's kind of strange, no? That why is the Torah going to such lengths over here to tell us about what happens to in the case of a convert who dies and doesn't leave any heirs behind, he doesn't leave any children behind. It seems like a very specific kind of a case, and yet the Torah over here, not only is the Torah mentioning it over here, but the Torah's mentioned it in the past as well. So what's the idea? The idea is that a person may decide to themselves, we're very good at self-justification. So a person may decide to themselves that this convert, he's not married, he doesn't have any kids, or he's married, he does have kids, he doesn't have any kids, he doesn't have anybody who's going to follow on after him, and he's got plenty of money anyway. So it can't really be considered to be stealing if somebody were to take his property. Now, sitting here in this room, we all know that doesn't make any sense, right? Everybody understands that stealing is stealing. It doesn't make any difference when you do it, how you do it, or who you do it to, that's for sure, right? Does it make any difference if somebody has children or doesn't have any children? What difference does it make? None whatsoever, right? When the Torah says, "Lo signov," that a person shouldn't steal, it doesn't make any kind of a condition that the person, only a regular person who's got children and can pass on his wealth to somebody else, him you're not allowed to steal from, but everyone else you are allowed to steal from. It doesn't make any sense. Stealing is stealing. When I was growing up, I grew up in England. One of the great English heroes, of course, is Robin Hood. I don't know if you're familiar with the story of Robin Hood. You probably are, because Walt Disney made a film of it at some point. But what was this Robin Hood? What did he do? So he stole from the rich and he gave to the poor. When I was growing up, this was considered to be one of the heroes of the of English culture. And it sounds, it sounds kind of noble, doesn't it? You take from the rich, who are normally pretty bad, pretty evil people, and you take their wealth and you give it off to the poor, and I guess that's how you get to be an English cultural icon, I suppose. In Torah law, it doesn't help very much. It doesn't make very much difference that the person's not a very nice person, the wealthy person's not a very nice person, and that he doesn't give charity the way that he's supposed to give charity, and you're going to come along and you're going to take care of the problem. You're going to hack into his bank account, and every month you'll take out 10% and you'll distribute it to charity in order to, in order that this person should live up to his obligations. It doesn't make any difference. What you're doing is stealing. And that's why the Torah is coming along over here. It's a very, very important, very fundamental idea. It really is. The idea of self-justification. We will be able to justify to ourselves, sometimes in the most ridiculous way, that what we're doing is okay. The way that I do something is okay. And it's interesting, actually, that when we see other people doing exactly the same thing, we're horrified, and we imagine that these people are, how could they possibly do what they're doing? And we don't even realize that we're doing the same thing ourselves. I always use the excuse. It's an excuse which it bothers me terribly, actually. There's a shul. I don't daven there very often. But when I do, one of the reasons I don't daven there very often is because there is a particular family over there where the father sits at the back of the shul and talks to his neighbor the whole way through. And every now and then when he sees his children talking, he'll tell them to be quiet. All of a sudden you'll hear a very loud like shh, shh, and he'll be pointing at one of his kids, and then he'll go back to talking to his neighbor. And I don't get it, I don't understand. But I guess, he's going to say, I've never actually asked him about it, but I imagine he's going to say, we've got to educate our children, they shouldn't speak in shul, right? So here I'm telling him that he shouldn't speak. Of course, the only real way of educating children not to talk in shul is by not talking in shul. Yeah, you do it. But that seems to be beyond him. So it's interesting. What happens when you've got this you've got this ger, you've got this convert who has died, and somebody has stolen from him? Where is his money supposed to go? How can you return it? How do you give it back? So the Torah says it should go to the Kohanim. Right, it's given to the Kohanim, and it's spread out a little bit, and that's what's done with it. And that way, it serves as a form of a kapora. It serves as a form of an atonement for what was done. Good. We're gonna leave that subject behind, and we're gonna move into something which is very, very interesting. It's also rather odd, no doubt about it. Something called the soita. It's what is the situation over here? You've got a wife who has been warned by her husband not to seclude herself with a particular person, and she does. And there are witnesses over there to say that they went into this room together and they were there for a specific amount of time, and now instead of wanting to get divorced, the person wants to try to make the marriage work, but in order to have that happen, they've got to go through a whole process of a whole procedure over here, which requires all kinds of interesting. We'll see. It's a very, very strange thing. So let's have a look down at the bottom. Last verse on the page. Vaydaber Hashem Moshe lemor daber b'nei Yisrael v'amart aleim ish ki tistei ishtoi u'mal la'boy ma'al. That if you look at the way that the words are written, it says that any man whose wife shall go astray and commit treachery against him. V'shachav ish oisa shichva zera v'ne'lam me'nei isha v'nisra v'hi nitma. And what has happened? So there's nothing like biblical English to confuse things. They have lain with her carnally. Okay, is that clear? Everybody knows what that means.
He ate her up.
Yeah, it means that they had relations together. They had relations together, but nobody saw it. Nobody saw it. There's no witnesses over here. What would happen if a woman had an adulterous relationship with somebody else, and they had witnesses that they'd had that adulterous relationship? The woman, that's it. The woman would be put to death. In biblical times, that was considered to be a capital crime. But over here, there's nobody there to witness what's going on. And now you can imagine he's very jealous. He doesn't like what's going on over here. He doesn't know for sure what's been happening. He just knows that she secluded herself with this person. And she's now defiled in his eyes. Even if she hasn't slept with this person, but she's done something she shouldn't have done. Right? When you get married, secluding yourself with another man other than your husband it's something which is forbidden to do. Which means that even if she hasn't done anything untoward, they just sat over there and they just had, they had a cup of tea together and that's all they did, then nevertheless, the husband becomes jealous. He's warned her that she's not allowed to do that again. I don't want you, secluding yourself with so-and-so. And she goes and she does it again. And there are witnesses. And she claims that nothing happened. They just had a little, they just sat down and had a little, whatever, like I said before, a cup of tea together. That's all they did. Very innocuous. He doesn't know.
Well, what did the witnesses say?
The witnesses say they went into a room and they stayed there long enough for them to be able to have relations together. But they didn't go into the room, so they've got no idea. Which is the witnesses are not coming to they're not coming to dispute what she said. The witnesses are coming to say this: we saw them go into that room and they closed the door. Maybe they locked the door as well, I don't know. She's saying nothing happened. And her husband says that nevertheless he doesn't want to divorce his wife, he wants to carry on living with her, but you can imagine he can't live with her in the with the shadow of this whatever's been going on hanging over them. Marriage is built on trust. If a husband doesn't trust his wife, or a wife doesn't trust the husband, then that's chipping away at the foundations of the marriage altogether. The husband says he wants to be able to live together with his wife, he wants to carry on living with her, but he wants to make sure that this particular issue is taken care of, because he's not sure that otherwise he won't be able to live with her. It's no good. So now we've got a whole procedure over here which is going to bring them to the Kohen, and they're going to go through a whole thing. They've got to bring all kinds of things. She's going to drink something, we'll talk about it. And that drinking of something is going to be the ultimate proof of whether she did or whether she didn't defile herself. If she slept with a person, she's going to die from drinking what she just drank, and if she didn't, then she's not going to. It's pretty serious stuff, right? And she knows what's going on. Which means that she knows that when she drinks from this concoction that she's going to be given, she knows that when she drinks from this liquid, right, from this drink, she knows that either she's going to live or she's going to die, but one way or the other, it's going to prove whether she did or whether she didn't. So I have just a little question for all of you. Thank you. I was going to ask it anyway, so I appreciate the offer. But I have a little question for you. This woman knows, right, that she had relations with that person. She knows it. She's not claiming that she was raped. She's just claiming that she had a cup of tea together with her friend over there in that room. But she knows that really she slept with him. And she knows that when she comes to drink this liquid, what's going to happen? She's going to die. So why do it?
How accurate is that?
Absolutely.
What was the chemical?
Well, we'll see. We'll talk about it. But take it at face value for the moment.
So the next question is, why would she take a chance?
Why? If this woman knows, it's not even a chance. Which means if she didn't sleep with him, nothing's going to happen to him, to her. And if she did, she's going to die. So, what exactly is she going to do? If she slept with him, what is she going to drink this for? Huh?
If she doesn't drink, then the husband is going to know that
She's guilty.
she's guilty. Well,
Okay.
why don't she want to drink the drink? And then she's going to die anyways.
Nah, hold on. She's not going to die. She'll have to get divorced.
I think you said
If you,
it's a crime that you get
it's a
killed for.
crime. It's a capital crime, but only if there are witnesses that saw you sleeping together, right? Which means that in the act. Which means that if you're not caught in the act, so fine. Everybody knows. If she would say, I'm not drinking this drink and I'll get divorced, then everybody will know that she had relations with that person, but it's fine. She's going to stay alive. So the question over here is, why would she do it?
Maybe because they're embarrassed. And,
Oh.
embarrassment for her is worse than death. She'd rather die than be embarrassed and divorce her husband like that.
Isn't that incredible? Again, Nachamal, here we are in this room. In this room, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, right? I mean, everyone would just say, so divorced. What's the big deal? What are you putting? You're putting your life on the line for what? Because you don't want to get embarrassed, but that's exactly what people would do. Because that sense of embarrassment is something which is so overwhelming that at that moment, you don't think straight, right? When you're trying to wriggle out of something which is going to cause you embarrassment, you'll do whatever you can in order not to do that, right? How many times, hopefully only as kids, but how many times have we said the most ridiculous lies in order to get out of a sticky situation, right? It's just going to land us into bigger trouble afterwards. We know that. But that moment, we think we can swing it, so we'll get away with it. Doesn't work, we know that. But we'll do it anyway because the power of embarrassment is so great that here, this woman's prepared to, she's prepared to take the risk of dying rather than admit to what she's done and to end up getting divorced and everybody's going to talk. Guess what happened to Mrs. So-and-so, right?
Is that pride? Do you think that
Yeah,
What
yeah.
that is pride.
Pride.
Can
I mean,
she
embarrassment, what's the concept of embarrassment? Embarrassment is that you have a certain picture of yourself and you don't want to do anything to dent that picture. You don't do anything that's going to make that picture anything but what it's supposed to be. If I admit, pride, it spreads itself out in all different kinds of places. You know, it's interesting. One of the when I first came to teach here, many years ago, one of the most important bits of advice I ever got given was never be ashamed to say that you don't know. Because that really is. What's the problem? We're so proud, and we imagine that we're so, you're giving a class and you're supposed to know everything, right? And if you don't know, then that means there's something wrong with you. There's something missing. You're not the person that you thought you were. And maybe you'll make something up rather than admit that you don't know. And that, of course, we're talking about Torah is truth, right? Torah is empathy. Can you imagine going to a doctor, going to a heart surgeon, and the heart surgeon's busy doing a little bit of surgery over there, and he can't quite remember which bit goes where or what to be done. So he just does it anyway. Rather than try to get somebody to help him in order to make sure this patient stays alive, he'll just, rather than do that, he'll pridefully, he'll just plug something in that's not supposed to be plugged in, and the person will die. The truth is, it could be that with doctors that's what happens. I don't know, but when you're dealing with something as enormous as somebody's life, or you're dealing with something as enormous as somebody's spiritual life, so just say you don't know. I'll tell you an interesting story. Many years ago, there was a professor came through. He's a professor of pathology, of all things, actually. So somebody asked a question in the shir, and I told him, I said, I don't know. It's a good question. You know what? Be later. I'll try and find an answer for you. And after the shir, he took me aside and he told me. He says, I've been in the world of academia for over 40 years. He says, and I've never heard anybody say they don't know before. Isn't that Isn't that just astonishing? You've been in the world of academia for 40 years. In the world of academia, the idea of saying you don't know, apparently, it reflects badly on you. If you're a professor of whatever field you're in and you don't know something, so obviously there's something wrong with you. Which is that pride will do the most ridiculous things in order to try to hold on to our pride. And very often what we're doing is so stupid that if we would just, let it go to begin with, we'd be in a much better shape than if we would just, stop doing what it is that we've done. And that's what's going on with this woman over here. She knows she's going to die. She knows that she slept with this person.
What if she says, I slept with him, but I want to do tshuva?
That's it, fine. She can do as much tshuva as she wants, but she's got to separate from her husband. It's forbidden. It's forbidden for a husband and a wife to remain together with each other when the wife has committed adultery. So I guess that's part of the tshuva process. That's part of the repentance process, that she's coming along and saying, okay, I did this act and I'm sorry that I did it. And then she's being told by everybody, okay, but...
Huh? She doesn't want to lose the husband.
So what's Pshat? Either not only is she going to lose her husband, she's going to lose her life as well, right? Or she'll end up losing her husband, and that will be the end of the story. So again, here in this room, it's a no-brainer, right? Here in this room, so big deal, so fine. However much you love your husband, you'll get divorced because you want to stay alive, don't you? But you see that it really doesn't work like that. It really doesn't. When people become involved in everyone is subjective about themselves. When they become involved in their own decision making, so very often we make the wrong decisions simply because we have a very skewed view of who we are or who we want to be. So what do? They come to the Kohen. Verse number 15. She's not coming voluntarily. She's being dragged along over there by her husband. So she's going to bring a meal offering which is made up of barley. Huh? Wait, there's more. There's she's going to bring a barley offering. Now, I don't know if you know very much about what goes on with regards to meal offerings inside of the temple, but it's very rare that barley offerings are brought. The barley offering, the most famous barley offering that's brought is the Omer offering, which was brought on the second day of Pesach, right, the second night of Pesach. And that's what we're counting now, Sfiras Omer, and that's got its own designation. This is a time, one of the few times when a offering was made out of barley. Normally the offerings were made out of wheat. Now again, what's the difference between wheat and barley? Barley was considered to be animal food, right? Wheat is considered to be food, wheat flour is considered to be food that was given over to human beings. The animals eat barley. So when we bring the Omer offering, which is the offering that's brought on the second night after Pesach, that's because we're working our ways up, we're bringing the counter spheres of Omer to get ourselves to Shavuot, and that's when we become like people. So we bring, it's very symbolic, we bring an offering made out of barley in order to represent the idea that right now we're more animal-like, but we're going to work on ourselves and we're going to draw ourselves up and we're going to become holy to the point where when we bring the 2 loaves of bread that are brought as an offering on Shavuot, they're made out of wheat. But now also we're beginning to understand something. No? Why is she bringing a meal offering made out of barley? Because she behaved in an animalistic way, right? She behaved in a way which is not acceptable. Therefore, she brings an offering which reflects her actions. Lo yitzoy kalav shemen. There's no oil poured over this offering. It's interesting that under normal circumstances, when meal offerings were brought to the temple, they had olive oil poured over them, or they had olive oil mixed into them. Olive oil was considered to be something. First of all, it gave it a liquid. It gave it a certain texture, very smooth. Right? If anybody here is keen on olive oil, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's got a certain kind of a something to it. It's very smooth. It's very healthy. Right? There's no olive oil poured over this offering whatsoever. V'lo yiten alav levoina ki minchas kanois hu minchas zikoyin mazkeres avoin. Not only is there no oil that's put on top of it, but also there is no, here, how do you say it? Frankincense. Okay, levoina is something called frankincense, which is again was a what was it? It was a spice that was put on, and it had a beautiful smell, and it would just make everything that much more enjoyable to be around. Right? Why is that? Because it's something called a minchas kanois, kinaot. Kinaot comes from the word kina, which means jealousy. Which means this is a bare necessity. This is a no frills mincha offering, a no frills meal offering. It's got nothing in it that's going to enhance it. It's got nothing in it that's going to give it a dimension of being something tasty or something which smells good, but rather it's just the barley being brought as an offering. Ve'kriv ota kohen, she's given over to the kohen. Ve'mida lifnei Hashem, and she stands up over there in the courtyard. Ve'lakach hakohen mayim kedoshim b'chli choretz u'mina ofa she'yeh b'karka mishkan yikach hakohen v'nosan al hamayim. And then he takes water, taken out of a what kli cheres is earthenware, right? Again, what's the idea? All of these things, the Gemara says that all of these things are going on in order to counterbalance what took place. So she served up, this person that she was secluded with, she served him up, delicacies to eat. So she brings an offering which has got no delicacies in it at all. She gave him wine to drink in crystal glasses. So she's given water that comes in an earthenware cup, right? An earthenware jug, which is that's considered to be the simplest, the least fancy method of bringing liquid. He takes some offer which is on the floor and he picks it up and he puts it into this mixture. And then she's brought in front of God, as it were. She's now ready to begin the whole ceremony over here. And this is where it's going to get bizarre what happens over here. Her hair is uncovered. This is a source that is brought by the sages to say that a married woman should have her hair covered. Right?
From here?
From over here, right? Because over here, we don't see it mentioned anywhere else. And all of a sudden, we see over here that she's having her hair uncovered when she comes into the. In other
words, when you're judged for some kind of infidelities, your purity is stripped.
Yeah, in a certain way, everything is stripped away. You're left defenseless. Your self-respect is taken away. Yeah. It's interesting that according to the rabbis, the reason why married women cover their hair, the covered hair is a symbol of the intimacy that exists between a husband and a wife. It's got nothing to do with not looking nice. It's to do with the idea of the hair being a symbol of the relationship that exists between a husband and a wife, that this is something which is private just between the two of us. You could say, what about clothing? Why isn't clothing good enough? So I think the answer is very simple, because everybody wears clothing, which means clothing can't be used as a symbol of my relationship with my wife, because everybody's wearing clothing, because that's the way everybody walks around. But covering the hair is something which is done in order to retain that sense of unique individuality that exists inside of each and every relationship.
I heard that the Satmar put a thing out that it says, no more shakers.
Yeah.
It made him very attractive.
I don't know. The evidence is like this. Where you may be familiar with the idea that married women wear wigs. It's called a sheitel in Yiddish. Right, what's the idea? The idea is that you're supposed to cover your hair. Now, many people get upset.
Why?
What?
Why? What's so significant about it?
What's significant about the hair? It's a good question. I don't know. The Arizal says that your hair represents some form of a connection between yourselves and God, which means that it's a Kabbalistic concept, right? Which means that when,
I was going to say Kabbalistic.
yeah, which means that
I don't see a need for it, though.
I don't see a need for a lot of things that we do over here in the Torah, right? If anybody here sees a need for putting on tefillin, let me know. If anybody here sees a need for not eating meat and milk together, let me know. I'd be happy to hear it. We have an awful lot of laws that are called chukim, right? Statutes that we do them because God told us to do them. Is there some kind of overwhelming logical reason why a woman should cover her hair when she gets married, and that's the symbol that exists between herself and her husband? I don't know. I mean, maybe it makes sense when you think about it theoretically, but at the end of the day, is it really? Okay, so even then, so we do what the Torah tells us to do. Ufaraz roish haisha v'nastan al kaper es minchas hazikoron minchas knois he, and what has happened? The meal offering is given to her, right? Which is again against the jealousy that's being generated over here between the husband and the wife. Or biyad kohen yu mei hamorim hamorim. And this special bitter water is going to be given to her, right? And she's going to have to drink this. The question is, what is this stuff? What's going on over here? So according to most of the Mefarshim, here you wanted to know what was it made up of, right? According to most of the Mefarshim, it was made up of just bits and pieces, which we'll come across, which it was pretty innocuous, and the only reason why it was working was because there's a miracle taking place over here, and it becomes bitter, and if she tastes it, then it's going to kill her if she's guilty, and if not, it's a miracle, right? According to at least one opinion, the Kohen, it was the other way round, which means that the Kohen would put in some kind of, I guess, poison of some kind, some amaves, and if the woman was not guilty, there would be a miracle and nothing would happen. But if the woman was guilty, then she would end up drinking this liquid and she would end up dying. What was it? Which one is what? Which is correct? I don't know. I would imagine that the first opinion is probably correct because that's the majority. The majority of the commentaries seem to indicate that there was a miracle that took place over here. There was nothing that was innately wrong with the water. It was just water that had bits in it, but there was nothing that was poisonous about the water. But when it was used in this context, it got turned into something which was deadly. However, the Gemara says that there are all kinds of conditions that are laid down over here as to whether this, what's going to happen over here, which means that if the husband if his reputation is not so great, then this water is not going to have any effect on his wife. Which means that the husband needs to be in a state of purity for him to be able to come and bring his wife over to the temple in order to get her to drink this, in order for it to work. You hear the idea? There's a certain sense of spiritual balance over here, right? Which means that if the husband is, if the husband's been, dallying around, then it's not going to work. What is fascinating is, and I'm surprised that nobody over here actually asked a question at any point, hold on a second, but what about the person that she's been having her affair with? What happens to him? So says the Gemara, when she drinks the water and it affects her, it's going to affect him as well. Which means that there's no one's coming out of this, right, having done something they shouldn't have done and not being affected by it. Which means the same way that she dies, he's going to die too. The death penalty, the idea of there being some kind of an enormous repercussion for a woman doesn't exist for men. Even though it's a betrayal of the marriage and it's a betrayal of the trust that the marriage is built upon, nevertheless, it doesn't have the same standing.